was already downstairs, and to me, it sounded like hands that hit the floor.
Tell me a little bit more about what happened the night he fell.
I asked him if he could make me some food, and he went downstairs, and I heard this big smack. I rushed down.
There's only a couple times as far as anything physical. Yeah, there was a couple times. I mean, I slapped him a couple times. I mean, nothing major, nothing like red flag.
I have this on my head because I fell down the stairs. I don't want people thinking that my wife is abusing me.
Shannon Price, why are the details of this event changing over the years? Let's review these details. In 2005, Gary moved to Santa Quinn, Utah, a small town south of Provo. While he was filming church balls in Utah, Gary met an actress, an extra by the name of Shannon Price. 5 months later, she proposed, and they were married on a mountaintop in Valley of the Fire State Park in Nevada on August 28th, 2007.
I feel like I made a difference in his life, and so I gave him the fuel to his fire to want to do stuff, to want to go out there, to want to be a better person and just be happier.
That promote mutual respect, honor, and satisfaction. In other words, love says, I can't win, not if it means you lose. And when the story of your life is told, I hope that your love defines the highest, most sacred achievement in human relationship, and that's a marriage. Shannon, here's your flowers. We should hold both hands, turn and face each other, look into each other's eyes. So cute. I couldn't have wrote it better myself.
Shortly after Gary was married, Gary was arrested for disorderly conduct after a heated discussion in public with his wife, Shannon Price, at that year. Now, sometime in May of 2008, Gary and Shannon Price made their appearance on divorce court, where they talked about each other's behaviors, but literally the marriage only lasted about 7 months. So they were divorced less than a year after their marriage. However, they continued to live together in Santa Quinn, Utah, and they continued to fight. In 2009, there was another domestic dispute where Shannon Price was arrested on suspicion of domestic violence, and both parties were cited for disorderly conduct. It was around that time where Gary decided to file a restraining order under John and Jane Doe, and he was supposed to serve it to Shannon.
Times when Gary and I discussed a restraining order, he just couldn't deal with it anymore.
It was never served to me. So it was just a document that Randy had made up and had printed out.
We'd prepare the paperwork. The next day he'd call me and say,
Randy, Gary Coleman, I need to rescind that order. Everything's cool, everything's fine so far. So maybe this fourth time around, things will work out.
Along with their marital issues, Gary's health pretty much worsened from there. The final film that he did was Midgets versus Mascots, which was filmed in Dallas. Now, there were some articles out there that basically said that Gary wasn't too happy about participating in that film. He actually talked to Vulture and various outlets at that time, basically told these outlets that he was embarrassed by the movie Midgets versus Mascots and that he only did it for the money. He says, and I quote, "I've got to pay my bills." He was asked, well, why did you bother coming to promote it, right? And Gary responded, because they're paying me. At that time, Gary was claiming that the movie nearly cost him his marriage and his relationship. He's quoted saying, "We had just gotten married and it was just hard on us," he said. "I mean, I was gone 6 weeks and that was miserable on this production. And she was miserable because I was always complaining about it." But director Ron Carlson at the time said that Gary typically is unhappy a lot. But oddly enough, at the same time, that's what makes him happy, he told us. He loves to complain. So this role was perfect for him. And this is what was said back then. One of the health issues that Gary had at that time was the heart surgery to replace an aortic valve. And after he did that, he developed pneumonia. The research is interesting about this heart surgery that has been talked about. Shannon Price is quoted telling the media shortly after his death was that Gary had heart surgery, that he had just a year to live after he went major heart surgery. This is what Shannon Price was telling the media. So when you're doing research about this part, it was like Shannon Price was telling the media that this man was only going to live for about a year after heart surgery. Now, this is a man who has, probably been told all his life that he wasn't going to live very long, who has been told different things about his health conditions, and he has pushed through. He had long-term dialysis. While he was doing the dialysis, doing treatments, working soon after heart surgeries and stuff like that. So it's amazing to me that when you read some of these articles and you're looking at the research, a lot of the people that are quoting that he only had about a year to live was a quote straight from Shannon Price, not from a doctor. So Shannon Price was telling the media, and these are from sources that I've been able to pick up. She was telling the media, well, he only had a year to live. In a most recent interview, that's what she was doing. She was telling the media, well, he only had a year to live.
What most people don't know about that is he actually had major heart surgery in 2009. And they said he wouldn't live a year. And he did make it 6 months.
But nothing of sorts is coming straight from a doctor, which makes me side-eye Shannon. Like, why are you saying this about a man that you're quote unquote in love with, right? I can't say they were married because they weren't. They had divorced each other. Why would doctors perform major heart surgery on a person that is only going to live for about a year? She told other sources. Price says doctors had given Gary less than a year to live. His body was failing him. Since he was born, he had all the kidney problems since he was young. Price says that the former child star had a heart valve surgery this past fall to replace aortic heart valve, and doctors didn't think he would make it. Well, after he had heart surgery, they said he wouldn't make it a year. Then he had a new dialysis access catheter put in, and they still said they didn't think he was going to make it a year. All of these quotes are coming straight from Shannon Price and not from a doctor. So the media was taking what Shannon was saying and running with it. I'm not a medical professional, but I don't know a doctor that would do heart surgery to only major heart surgery to repair anything, to only tell their patients that they're not going to live that they're only going to live for a year. I think Gary went throughout his life knowing that anything could happen to him because of his medical history. This man was struggling financially. So I would imagine that the cause of a major heart surgery to only live less than 6 months or a year probably wouldn't be a good idea if your lifespan or time span is not going to be long, if that makes sense. But then again, I don't know. I'm just speculating here. Of course, there's HIPAA. There's all kinds of things to consider when it comes to this. But I think that using Shannon's own words, her reasoning in the media is very bogus, in my opinion, when it comes to this. He only had less than 6 months to live or a year to live. It doesn't make sense. So in January of 2010, Gary was hospitalized after suffering a seizure in Los Angeles, and he was hospitalized following the month after suffering another seizure on the set of the Insider TV series. We talked about that in my last video. The media and the personalities knew how to poke at Gary to get him to react, which is what the Insider did at that time. They poked. And then you had Dr. Charles Sophie, who we've investigated here on this channel. Make sure you check out the videos recommending medication.
Wow, that was hard to watch. And joining us now with perspective on what we sat through there and Gary's tirade is behavioral psychologist, expert Dr. Charlie Sophie. You wrote the book Side by Side, which is flying off the shelves. And I want you to be quite blunt. Was she too tough on him?
Absolutely not. He's explosive. He tries to hold it together, then he blows. You're lucky he didn't hit somebody here.
Right.
Really?
Do you think that she was too tough? Because I thought she was
Well, she was provoking him. Because
provoking,
right.
That's the word.
She
In an
wanted
inappropriate manner?
No, she wants answers. You guys want answers.
Could the right type of therapy really help him where he is right now?
What I saw there needs medicine.
Dr. Sophie, thank you so much for your perspective. And tomorrow, the aftermath you haven't seen as Gary's rage continues.
He recommends medication for everyone. I mean, everyone.
What would you do if you were taking care of Britney Spears? What would be the first thing you'd do today to get her help?
Medication. Put it in her. If she doesn't want to take it, I would inject it in her.
Put him on medication. Britney Spears. Put him on medication. This person. I mean, I'm sure he was recommending it for Elliot Rogers, the murderous incel. Watch those videos down in the description box. Okay, so what we know is that sometime in February of 2010, Gary filed a protection order, and it was filed under John and Jane Doe versus. We reviewed that here. Gary is concerned about his life, but he hadn't served this yet to Shannon, and I think part of that is because of complete fear that he had of her. Now, in 2019, Shannon decides to do an interview, and we're going to review that along with what she said back in 2010. So you guys can maybe review and see some of the inconsistencies between 3-4 years ago to 2010. Let me know your thoughts in the chat as we're reviewing.
The 911 call that day that Gary fell.
Now, Gary's death certificate does say that his cause of death was due to a consequence of a fall. But remember, in the 911 call, she didn't know what had happened. She didn't know if he had fell. She didn't know nothing. She just heard a sound and she wanted to go check on him, or she wanted to go check and see what's going on. But don't forget, in 2019, she was telling folks that he was halfway down and she's like, hey, are you sure? I can get me those pizza rolls later. Don't worry about it. Are you sure? This is her words in 2019.
When he came home from dialysis that day, I could tell he was really weary, really tired. He was quick to put his oxygen tank on. And I asked him, I said, do you mind going downstairs and putting some pizza rolls in the microwave for me? And I said, if you don't feel up to it, it's okay. I can go do it in like an hour or so. And of course, you know, he's like Papa Bear. I mean, he really loved me, and I don't know any other way to explain that. And I'm obviously not going to say Mama Bear because he's not female. So, you know, that love came into play, and he was like, it's fine. I can totally go down there. And at the time, I was actually diagnosed with an inner ear problem. So I was really sick in bed. As he went down there, I had just a bad feeling. He wasn't feeling well. And I was like, are you sure that you feel good enough to go down there and make, you know, put those pizza rolls in the microwave? And he said, yeah, I'm fine. And he got halfway downstairs and was like, are you sure? You can come back up. I know that you don't feel well. You just had dialysis. It was a Wednesday.
In this 2019 interview, Shannon says that Gary got halfway downstairs and she asked him again, are you sure you can come back up? You know, are you sure if you want to make that food, you can come back up? And she was telling him, I know you don't feel well. You just had dialysis. In the 911 call, she stresses that he was making her food. In an interview in 2010, she doesn't share that she had stopped him or had asked him, are you sure, while he was halfway down there. This is what she said in 2010.
Tell me a little bit more about what happened the night he fell.
I asked him if he could make me some food, and he went downstairs and I heard this big smack. I rushed down there and found him lying in a pool of blood.
So these are details that are new in 2019.
And so he had gone downstairs and I was in bed, just laying there feeling miserable, feeling awful, feeling just helpless, like I couldn't do anything for myself. And that's the worst feeling that anyone could go through. And then all of a sudden I just hear this. It sounded like pots and pans had just fallen. Like he just got them from the stove or whatever, and they just fell. And what I did is I said Gary 3 times and he didn't answer me. And that's when I knew something was completely wrong. I jumped out of bed, went downstairs, and he was lying there in a pool of blood. I can't tell you if he had a seizure. I can't tell you if he passed out. I don't exactly know what happened. And from then on, I felt super helpless. I cried.
I had my husband go make me some food downstairs. He just got home. I heard this big bang. I went downstairs, blood everywhere. I don't know if he's okay. I'm not down there right now because
I just found my husband. I just heard my husband. That is the beginning of the 911 call.
I have seizures. If I get stressed out, I'm going to seize. Okay, do you know what happened? Did he fell? Or head is bloody. There's blood all over the floor. I don't know what happened. I really don't know what happened. I just heard this bang and I went down there. He's on the floor. And what type of bang? Huh? What type of bang? What type of what? What type of bang? Like was it loud, like a crash? Like he fell? Like he fell, yeah. Hey, so he fell while he was cooking, or what happened? I don't know. I just heard this big. Yeah, I don't know what happened. He fell, and I don't know. And there was blood all over, and I can't do anything.
And that's when the 911 call call came into play. And by that time, Gary was actually sitting up. And what a lot of people don't know or are aware of is that Gary was lucid enough to walk to the ambulance. He walked to the ambulance himself. He went to the hospital, and there was some time that had gone by and I had called. I honestly didn't know the extent of the accident. Thursday was the next day, and I got this horrific phone call, obviously one that nobody wants to get. And the lady simply said, "Does Gary have a DNR?" And I said, "Resuscitate him." So what happened is they were taking him to dialysis, and he went into cardiac arrest. What most people don't know about that is he actually had major heart surgery in 2009, and they said he wouldn't live a year, and he did make it 6 months. He told me he loved me, and the next day, Thursday, like I had said, he went into cardiac arrest. I said, resuscitate him. I tried to save his life. I did everything I could. I was on his healthcare directive.
There was an advance directive, and it said that Gary's wishes were to be basically on the machine for 15 days before making the decision of pulling any kind of plug. 15 days, and Shannon decided to do it in 2. I would have thought that if an advance directive is written so that somebody tells you that they want at least for you to wait 15 days, that would have been the most, in my opinion, morally thing to do, right? Allow this person to come out of whatever they're coming out of. But then in my mind, and I can't help but wonder, is if he would have come out of what he was going through, would he have spoken out against Shannon? Would he have said something like, "She pushed me," or "She did this to me," or "She did that to me"? I don't know. And we're left to question. Legally, Shannon didn't do anything wrong by pulling the plug within 2 days. Because the way in which the advance directive is written is that if there's more than one doctor giving the recommendation that she pull the plug, she's able to do that. And she had more than one doctor giving that recommendation at that time. But if the man that you love is laying there and he had something written for you as his wife, don't you think that you would have, I don't know, you would have waited? But y'all let me know your thoughts in the comments. Again, I'm just speculating. My opinion. This is from a local article. Santaquin police confirmed that the investigation into the death of actor Gary Coleman ended after the medical examiner ruled the death was accidental. Santaquin police detective Stan Egden said that the department had been waiting on the medical examiner's report to officially close the case. He said the report listed Gary's immediate cause of death as close head injury due to a fall, but said it included renal failure and blockage to one of Coleman's major arteries as other factors. He was in trouble, the detective said. The hard part always is when someone's famous, a lot of people assume a lot of things. I felt sorry for him. He was physically spent. Shannon Price was living with him in the Santaquin home when he fell and made the call to 911. She told dispatchers that she had her own medical conditions that prevented her from aiding in efforts to stop Gary's bleeding. After his death, she came under fire with accusations that she hadn't done enough to save his life. Her father, Gary Price, told the Desert News that he felt the medical examiner's report cleared his daughter's name. After Gary died, there were so many people who came out and said that Shannon did this and Shannon did that. She took a lot of violent, vicious hits, so they took this report as vindication. As Shannon Price said that while she was unaware that the investigation had continued, she wasn't surprised when she heard the medical examiner's conclusion. She's quoted saying, "We didn't worry from the beginning," she said. "We knew the truth. It's nice to know that that's over with. I'm just going to try to move on the best way that I can." Dale Price, who is Shannon's brother, said that the family had long known that Gary had some serious health concerns. He said a doctor involved in an open heart surgery Gary underwent last year predicted that the man wouldn't survive that year. So this is something that the family is saying, that he wouldn't survive a year after the surgery. Shannon said that the physical decline of her ex-husband is the only thing she can't talk about. I don't know how people expected this man to, with his deteriorating condition, to hold a household down if he was struggling. I mean, I don't know how he was supposed to support Shannon or his family or whatsoever, while they were married. I don't know what she expected from him. What do you guys think? So basically, the police waited for the medical examiner's office to conclude their investigation to determine if there was foul play or there was more to this. They ruled Gary's death as accidental.
Explain to me how that is. I mean, you guys had gotten divorced and then reconciled?
We decided that wasn't what we wanted. We just had a disagreement, and after we both filed and it went through, we decided that wasn't it wasn't the right choice. We were going to renew our vows soon, but our health issues got in the way, so we were unable to do that. Every couple, has their moments, and yeah, we had a lot of disagreements, but we loved each other. It was golden.